Scripture this morning will come out of 1 Chronicles, 29th chapter, verses 14 through 18. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. We are foreigners and strangers in your sight, as we were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for building you a temple for your holy name comes from your hand, and it all belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. All these things I have given willingly, with honest intent, and now I have seen with joy how willingly your people who are here have given to you. Lord, the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, keep these desires and thoughts in the hearts of your people forever, and keep their hearts loyal to you. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. John Wesley was the founder of the Methodist movement. The Methodist Church has several denominations, as it has turned out, but John Wesley was the starter. John Wesley lived in the 1700s, and he was what you might call a fairly autocratic man. John Wesley liked it done his way, and preferably his way only. But when he started the Methodist movement, and when the Methodist movement began to get underway, Wesley understood that one person, even himself, didn't know everything and couldn't do everything. In the British Methodist Church, they do not have what you and I call bishops. They have kept the tradition of separating from the Church of England, and that included getting rid of the hierarchy system that the Church of England uses. Well, now the British Methodists and the Anglicans are talking to each other about how they can unify as a witness to the world. And some of our British Methodist brothers and sisters climb the nearest wall at any mention of a bishop. In the United States, the United Methodist Church, we inherited bishops. Francis Asbury, who came over in the 1700s, wasn't going to do anything until he was called bishop. And then, of course, once he was, he organized the Methodist Church in the United States as we now know it. So we have bishops, but bishops are different in the United Methodist Church than they are in either the Episcopal Church or even the Roman Catholic Church. In the United Methodist Church, bishops have a fairly limited role. They can't do a whole lot by themselves. In fact, basically, their number one authority is to send pastors to churches. They do a lot of consultation in order to do that, but the final responsibility is theirs. But everything else with a United Methodist bishop has to be done in groups. And part of that was because Wesley understood that no one person, no pope, no king, no archbishop, nobody like that has all the wisdom that's necessary in order for the people of God to keep making faithful witness. Because I know you can find this hard to believe, but things change in our world. Things change, and that means that sometimes the church has got to adapt to the change in order to make a faithful witness. So John Wesley began to organize groups. You and I would call them small groups. He called them covenant groups. But the idea was that these small groups would get together, and they would be small enough in number that every week they would have time for every member to go around and answer the question, how is it with your soul? How is it with your soul? And the expectation was that the person would tell what they had done wrong that past week, how God had guided them back into the way, and what they planned to do in terms of redemption. John Wesley called this holy conferencing. Holy conferencing. So what you and I would call a small group, John Wesley would have said, yes, that's one way that we do holy conferencing. Now, as it turned out, John Wesley had a lot more in mind when he talked about holy conferencing, the Bible study that meets every week at 6. He would say that is another form of holy conferencing. Some people in the world laugh about the Methodist Church. They say, oh, Methodist Church never does anything without a committee meeting. And there is some truth in that. Because the committees of a church are designed to do holy conferencing. Wesley understood that the Holy Spirit tends to move in groups. Tends to move within the group known as church, but it also tends to move in these smaller groups. Groups who study, groups who hold each other accountable, groups who have to make decisions. And anytime one of those groups gets together, that's holy conferencing. Now, of course, in the past 4 centuries or so, the language of holy conferencing has sort of disappeared. We don't use it much. But tonight is one of those leftovers within the United Methodist Church. Tonight we will have what is known as the Charge Conference. Tonight is a Charge Conference, and we will meet at the Woods United Methodist Church, and First Church Grand Prairie will hold their Charge Conference, and the Woods United Methodist Church will hold their Charge Conference, and the district superintendent will be present, because that's how you magically turn into a Charge Conference. Now, it used to be that you didn't have Charge Conference once a year. You used to have quarterly conferences. And the district superintendent would come out for a quarterly conference. And there would be an expectation that the DS would worship with the church, and then they would eat together. The district superintendent would be expected to walk through the buildings to inspect how things were going. And then there would be holy conferencing. How are we teaching the children? What's happening with the youth? How are we inviting people and welcoming them in our church? And so 4 times a year, the district superintendent would come to a church, to a charge. You are my charge. First Grand Prairie is my charge. My first charge was a 2-point charge. Logan and Narragansett, New Mexico, which are as small as they sound. But those two, when they had a charge conference, the 2 churches would meet together because they were one charge, even if they were 2 churches. But at quarterly conference then, the district superintendent would be right on the spot and would know what was going on with each church. Now, for better or for worse, it changed. There are more churches and more charges than there used to be, and district superintendents can be expensive, so now we've said, well, let's use fewer district superintendents. So now we have joint charge conferences, like we will be having this evening. Now, on the one hand, it means the district superintendent is not among us as often as we would like. On the other hand, it does mean that we're going to get to meet with our friends in the woods. And, you know, we don't do that often enough, so it's not going to hurt us to look one another in the eye and say, hello, Grand Prairie. So there are pros and cons either way. But the word itself, charge conference, is an assumption by John Wesley that holy conferencing is going to go on, that there will be decisions that get made. We will elect all those committees, including the Board of Trustees. Now, Board of Trustees is a very interesting group because, as it turns out, you and I do not own this building. You and I do not own any of our buildings. We hold them in trust. We hold them in trust for the United Methodist Church. And if you push that theology, of course, what the United Methodist Church says is, we hold these churches in trust for Jesus Christ. These are Christ's church. These are Christ's church buildings. All of us are Christ's churches. We simply hold them in trust. And since we don't actually own this stuff, somebody else does, that means there has to be a board of trustees. And the board of trustees of First United Methodist Church Grand Prairie is actually the legal entity that does all our authorization. Now, The administrative council tells the board of trustees, here are the ministries that are going to happen, please make the buildings ready. And the staff parish relations committee tells the board of trustees, okay, here's how many people you can hire in order to help care for the buildings. The finance committee says to the board of trustees, okay, you can spend that money if you want to, but we don't have it, so we advise you not to spend that money. But the board of trustees is the legal entity. Because we don't own this stuff, we hold it in trust. Now, some of you have served on the board of trustees from time to time, and sometimes boards of trustees get treated like a honeydew. You know, honey, do this, and honey, do that, and honey, fix this, and honey, this is leaking, and all the other things that come with old buildings. But the reality is that the board of trustees is your representative for holding all that we hold in trust. That means, if you push it a little bit, that all of us are trustees. Every last one of us is a trustee of First United Methodist Church. We hold this church in trust from Jesus Christ. All right, I hope I'm about to see every hand in the place this morning. How many of you have ever washed your hands after going to the bathroom near the church? Please, everybody, raise your hand. Okay? Good to know. Now, when you finished washing your hands, you took a paper towel, didn't you? Yeah, you know what? The paper towel company does not donate. That was your paper towel. You paid for it. The water that you used to wash your hands, you paid for that too. And what would happen if, after you finished washing your hand, you used that paper towel to mop up all of the splashes and spills before you threw it away? How much would that make a difference with your paper towel in your bathroom welcoming your guests and visitors? Because it's your church, it's your bathroom. You hold it in trust. 2 weeks ago, we had our first opportunity, if you haven't had a chance yet, there are extra ones of these out on the table, to fill out an estimate of giving card. And we talked about the fact that an estimate of giving card is a tool. Money itself is a tool. And the estimate of giving card is the way that the finance committee can plan ahead. They say, all right, well, if we have about this much coming in 2019, then we can spend about that much in 2019. So this is a very helpful tool. Those of you who filled one out, thank you. Those of you who haven't had a chance yet, please do. But this is also one of the ways that the Finance Committee communicates with you and me, because the other thing that they're saying with this is the money that you have is held in trust. That's what David was saying. David was about to die. And David had had a vision that he wanted to build God a temple. And God had said, nope, you are a man of war. You're not building any house of mine, but your son Solomon is going to be a man of peace. He can build it. And David rather reluctantly took that. But before he died, David threw this massive party. What you and I would have called holy conferencing. Because by the time he had this gathering, he had gathered up all of the wood and the timber that might be needed for the temple. He had gathered up all the marble and all of the stone and all of the precious metals that will be used for the temple. He had gotten everything laid out, and then he announced to the congregation, I am giving this much gold and this much silver. And as far as we can tell from the Bible, then he sort of stood there and eyeballed everybody. Now, if your leader gets up and says, well, I've just given this much, guess what people tend to do? Oh, well, if King David is going to give something, so will I. And the people began to come forward and give their gifts. And after all that gift giving had gone on, then the reading this morning was part of David's prayer. Oh God, how is it that your people can give this generously, since it was all yours in the first place? All of the timber was yours in the first place. All of the stone was yours in the first place. All of the silver, all of the gold, all of that is yours, oh God. We just hold it in trust. The money that you and I have, we hold in trust. And what the Finance Committee is reminding us is that someday we're going to have to answer, what'd you do with what I gave you? How'd you share it? How did you use it to change the world? And it's not just going to be the money, friends. Everybody look at your hands for a second. Go ahead, hold them out there, look at your hands. Hands, Julie. Hello. Okay, look at your hands. Those are your hands, right? Nope, that's not right. They are not your hands. Those are God's hands, and God has given them to you in trust. And someday, God is going to say, what did you do with the hands that I gave you? What did you do with the feet that I gave you? What did you do with the digestive system that I gave you? Did you take care of it? Did you abuse it? Did you use it for the sake of helping somebody else? And those are going to be questions that you and I have to ask, have to answer, because trustees are always asked to give an account. I hope a lot of us are going to be tonight, 6 o'clock at the Woods, in order to vote on all the things that the charge conference has to do some holy conferencing about. And I hope that you will speak your personal word of thanks for those who will serve on our board of trustees, because they are the official part of what you and I hold anyway. But I also hope you will remember that all of us are trustees. You and I are trustees of First Church Grand Prairie. You and I are trustees of the very lives we've been given. And God is trusting us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.